Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. It's time for Jaded Blossom's July celebration. They only have 2 sales a year, so this is always a great time to grab all those goodies from your wish list. If you're ready to start shopping, I do have a link provided in the description box below. Along with the July celebration, Jaded Blossom does have a new release. It's another adorable release and perfect for summertime. The first item is a die set. This is Aloha Word Die. It's currently not available for individual purchase. This is the freebie you'll receive if you purchase at least $60 worth of product, and one item has to be from the new release. The freebie is available on Friday only, July 7th, and while supplies last. The next item is a stamp set called Pineapples for Sale. There are lots of really fun sentiments. It's Tiki time, Lays for sale, Pineapples for sale, Surf Shack, Rentals and Lessons, Hula Lessons, Snack Shack, Fresh Coconuts, and lots more. And these are designed to work with the Build-A-Booth set, but you can also use them separately. The next stamp set is called Tropical Vibes. There's the stamps and coordinating outline dies. More really fun sentiments. Aloha Gnome. Thank you for being the sweetest Gnome. You are my paradise. Tiki time with my Gnomies. Hang loose. Tropical vibes. Gnomed out. I'm on island time. And a few other fun sentiments. Jaded Blossom always has some of the best sentiment sets. There's a new stencil set this month. This is Hibiscus Stencil. There are 2 pieces. One is for the flowers and the other will create that inside piece of the flowers. I love this beautiful design and it's perfect for creating your own pattern paper. You can customize it with different colors. And I know it'll be a surprise, but I'm not making pink hibiscus flowers. There are 2 new die sets. The first is the new Gnome add-on. This is called Tiki Add-ons. It's a great addition to the Gnome dies. I've already snipped apart all of the die sets and added them to some magnetic sheets. And if you're interested in the large size magnetic sheets and storage sleeves, I will have a link in the description box below. There are 2 new hats. There's a straw hat and a pineapple hat, and the pineapple hat is adorable. There's a torch, a little statue, a grass skirt, the sentiment Aloha, Pina Colada, Hibiscus, a little coconut top, and a small pineapple. The final item from the new release is an add-on for the Build-A-Booth set. This is Tiki Add-ons. There are 3 different bunting sets, pineapple, hibiscus, and some leaves, the sentiment Tiki bar, a couple of teeny tiny flowers, and a fun grass skirt to put around your booth. All of the new items are currently available, and I do have a link in the description box below. I made a few cards using the new release. The paper pad I'll be using for most of the cards is called Preppy Prints. It's by Catherine Pooler. There are a couple of really cute pineapple designs, so I thought it would work well with the new release. It is an older collection, but if it is still available, I will have a link in the description box below. For card design number 1, I selected 3 pattern papers. I have this fun floral paper for the background. Toward the bottom of the card, I'm adding a 3/4 inch strip of the pineapple pattern paper and also a 1 inch strip of this fun yellow and orange geometric pattern. To add a little bit of shine and contrast, I'll put a Love from Lizzie peel off along the outside edge of each of the pattern paper strips. I'll wrap the end around the back, layer this piece on some green cardstock, then I'll add my card front onto a card base. All of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size, 4¼ inches by 5½ inches. Next I'll add an Octagon die, and I cut this out from some white shimmer cardstock. I'll put glue on the back and adhere it more on the right side of the card. Inside the Octagon, I'll be adding one of the girl gnome images. I think it's been several months since I've shown the full assembly of a gnome, so I decided to do that today. I first cut out the background piece of the girl gnome. I'm using white cardstock. It really doesn't matter since all of that area will be covered up. It's just a nice guide for adding all of the different pieces while you assemble your gnome. With the girl gnome, it's always best to start with the skirt. Since she'll be wearing a grass skirt, I decided to add several different layers. I cut out the regular skirt from some green cardstock and 2 of the grass skirts, one from that same green cardstock and the other from a lighter shade of green cardstock. I'll adhere all of those together, and I did offset the 2 grass skirts just to add a little more fullness to it. After adhering the skirt, I like to add the head. I'll adhere that down using some glue, and to get the placement correct, I like to hold the hat on top. That way I know if I need to move the head up or down a little. Since the grass hat is shorter than the background traditional gnome hat, I will need to trim off some of that background piece. Next, I'll add the nose, and I am putting some foam dimension on the back. I'll adhere that in place. On the right and left side of her face, I'm also putting some small foam dimension, and that's where I'll attach her braids. The next step is to add her feet. I also put a little bit of foam dimension on the little white areas and some glue on the back of her feet. If I notice any of the white area of that background piece showing, I'll simply trim it away. I'm also adding some bows on her braids. I'll put just a tiny drop of glue down and adhere those in place. This little girl will be wearing the coconut top. For the background piece of the coconut top, I used the same fuchsia cardstock color and a dark brown cardstock for the coconuts. I'll put glue on the back and adhere her little coconut top. I also cut out the pieces for one of the hibiscus flowers. I used some more of the fuchsia cardstock for the main portion of the flower, a brighter yellow cardstock for the little stem, and a lighter pink cardstock for the center of the flower. On the outline piece, you should first glue down the stem, then you can add the main flower die cut piece. I forgot to do that while I was recording this video, but luckily the glue hadn't dried, so I was able to peel off that piece. I'll adhere all those pieces together and attach it on the right side of her straw hat. I was trying to be good and not assemble any of the pieces for this first card, but I forgot and I did assemble the little pineapple. There's the background piece, the little crisscross of the front of the pineapple, and also the stem. And this pineapple image is from the Build-A-Booth Tiki add-on set, not the Gnome add-on set. The pineapple on the Gnome set is a little bit larger, and I didn't want to cover up her coconut top. I'll glue her hands to the pineapple so she's holding it, flip that piece over, and put foam dimension on the back. Then I'll remove the release paper and add my pineapple in front of the little girl gnome. I did use a white gel pen to add a few highlights to the pineapple, the gnome, and also the hibiscus flower. For a sentiment, I've already stamped and cut it out. Gnomed out, I'm on island time. Using the outline die, I cut out a second piece from some magenta mirror cardstock. I layered the 2 pieces together to create a shiny drop shadow. Then I'll put foam dimension on the back and adhere the sentiment in the upper left-hand corner. I'll also put foam dimension on the back of the little girl gnome, remove the release paper, and add her on the Octagon die cut. To finish off the card, I'm adding some green enamel dots from Alta Nu. I'll put 3 around the sentiment in the upper left-hand corner and 2 next to the gnome on the right side. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For card design number 2, I am using a card sketch for inspiration. This is from Sugar Pea Designs. It's Sugar Sketch number 44. This is a great sketch for featuring several different pattern papers. I have a piece of teal cardstock. I'll add the pineapple pattern paper on the bottom and a teal polka dot paper on the top. Between the 2 pattern papers, I will add a Love from Lizzie peel off, and I only need a small piece since most of that will be covered up with the other pattern paper. For the diagonal piece, I'm using this fun pineapple pattern paper. I'll first layer it on the same teal cardstock. I'll put just a small amount of ATG tape on the back, place it on the front of the card. Then I'll flip over this panel, use my scissors to trim off the extra. Now I'll remove that panel, put glue on the back, and adhere it to my card. I wanted to make sure to have some of the teal border on the top and left side of that panel. I'll put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. Next, I'll add a stitch circle die cut, and I did cut this out of white shimmer cardstock. On the right side, I'll add a small scrap piece of cardstock just to help keep everything nice and level. This card will be featuring another pineapple image, and this die is from the Gnome Tiki add-on set. I have the background piece that I cut out from some bright yellow cardstock. The little crisscross, I use a darker yellow cardstock and green for the stem. I've already stamped and cut out the sentiment, Tropical Vibes. Using the outline die, I cut out a second piece from the same magenta mirror cardstock that I used on the first card, layered those two together to create the fun drop shadow. Before adhering the sentiment down, I will put a scrap piece of cardstock on the very left side where it goes off of the stitched oval die cut. Then I'll add the pineapple on the right side of the sentiment. For embellishments, I'm adding some iridescent gem stickers. I'll put 3 on the right side of the diagonal panel. They do have adhesive on the back, but I'm adding a small drop of glue since I'm not sure how old this bling is. I'll also add a couple of gem stickers underneath the sentiment on the left side. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For card design number 3, the pattern paper is from Paper Rose's Ocean Dance collection. It's an older collection, and I don't believe it's available any longer, but I knew this blue paper would be perfect for the background. At the bottom of the panel, I did add a 1.5 inch strip of dark green cardstock. Now I'll set that aside and start working on the booth. I cut out the main booth and all of the boards from some brown cardstock, and I'm adding a little extra color to most of the pieces. The ink color is by Catherine Pooler. This is the Macchiato color. One of the boards won't be visible at all, so I didn't add any ink to the edges. And you'll see why here in just a moment. Now it's time to assemble the booth. I'll put glue on the back of each of the boards, add the larger board on the top of the booth, and the 3 narrow boards at the bottom. And the board where I don't have any ink, that one's on the top of the 3 narrow boards. I'm placing an acrylic block on top for some added weight while the glue dries. I'm using Barely Art glue, and sometimes it takes just a little bit longer to adhere, especially when the die cuts have all that fun stitch detail. But once it dries, those pieces aren't going anywhere. Next, I'll add the fun grass skirt piece. As you can see, it does cover up most of the lower portion of the booth. With the top board not visible at all, I could have left it off, but I like to keep things nice and level, and by not having that one strip there may be a noticeable dip on the top portion of the grass skirt since it doesn't have that other piece of cardstock underneath. While I wait for the glue to dry on the booth, I'll start assembling the hibiscus garland. I cut out the background from some black shimmer cardstock, use red cardstock for the flower, and yellow cardstock for the center of the flower. I love all the fun garland pieces included on the Build-A-Booth sets, and you could use those on a card without the booth. It adds a really fun detail. I have 2 more pieces of the flower to glue down. Then I'll put glue on the back of the garland and adhere it on the grass skirt portion of the booth. Once I have the booth fully assembled, I'll put glue on the back and adhere it to the front of my card. The Build-A-Booth is fairly large, and it fills most of an A2 size card. Jaded Blossom now has several fun add-on sets to go along with their original Build-A-Booth die set. And if you like the gnomes, you can have a gnome sit in front of the booth or behind the booth. I've already stamped the sign, Hula Lessons. The stitched rectangle die for the sign is included in the original Build-A-Booth die set. I put foam dimension on the back, and I'll adhere it at the very top of the booth at a slight angle. After adding all of the other items to the booth, there are only 2 nail areas showing, and I'm using some Love from Lizzie peel-offs, silver mirror color in the bubble design for the little nails. This is a retired peel-off set. Now it's time to fill up the booth with grass skirts and little coconut tops. I thought it would be cute to have all the different items on tiny hangers. I am using a die that's not by Jaded Blossom. This is from Honeybee Stamps. It's part of their Bundle of Joy die set. I cut out the hangers from some silver mirror cardstock, and I'll add just a little bit of glue to adhere the coconut tops and the grass skirt. And on the back side of the grass skirts, I'm also adding a strip of double-sided adhesive tape. The 3 coconut tops will hang on that top board, and the grass skirts will hang on the sides of the booth. I'll put foam dimension behind the areas that aren't touching the booth. That way they'll stay at the same level. And I'll put glue on the back side of the areas that touch the booth. Next, I'll add the 2 grass skirts. And unfortunately, they do cover up some of the hibiscus garland. But you can still see the 3 flowers in the center and the 2 peeking through the grass skirt on the right and left side. I used some fun green glitter cardstock for the 2 grass skirts. I'll add a little bit of foam dimension just in the areas where it's not touching the booth, and glue on the back side of the other areas. Next, I'll add some small black circle peel-offs, and I'm putting it right underneath the hook part of the hanger. That way the hanger doesn't look like it's just floating on the booth. It looks more like the hangers on a hook or a small nail. For a final finishing touch, I'll use a white gel pen and add highlights to the booth, the coconuts, and the center of the hibiscus flowers. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For the second card, I set up the booth shop a little bit differently. Not sure which one I prefer. I felt that the first card I made seemed a little off balance with the 2 skirts on the right and all of the coconut tops on the left, so I tried to change it up for the card I recorded in this video. Now moving on to card design number 4. I selected 2 pattern papers. The background is bright yellow and it has some fun orange little flower designs. I also have some teal paper with yellow and white polka dots. I'll layer that piece on some teal cardstock, add that panel onto the pattern paper background. I'll put my card front onto a card base. I'm also adding one of the Octagon die cuts, and I did use some white shimmer cardstock for that. I'll adhere it in place using some glue. Now I'll start working on one of the boy gnomes. I have part of the gnome assembled. I've attached his beard and feet. This gnome will be holding the sentiment Aloha. I cut out the background piece from some white cardstock and cut out the sentiment from the same teal cardstock. I'll adhere all of the letters so it has a fun outline around the sentiment. The letters do have the faux stitching, so it adds a really fun detail. The gnome will be wearing the adorable pineapple hat. I cut out the background from some bright yellow cardstock, some orangish yellow cardstock for the grid part of the pineapple, and green cardstock for the leafy stem. Just glue all of those pieces together. The curve of the hat matches the curve of the gnome's beard. Makes it really easy to assemble. I will need to trim off part of the background gnome hat since it does go higher than the pineapple hat. After attaching the hat, I'll glue down the mustache and his nose. And I did pop up his nose using some foam dimension. Next, I'll put glue on the back side of his hands, just in the finger area, and add one on the right and left side of the Aloha sign. And if you're not sure where to place the hands, the die set does include an outline piece with the hand placements. I just prefer to do it myself. I'll flip that piece over, put foam dimension on the back, and adhere this sign in front of the gnome. He is absolutely adorable with this pineapple hat. Although my daughter did tell me it looks like the pineapple is eating his head. And of course now that's all I can see when I look at the gnome with the pineapple hat. He's still cute though. I did add a few highlights using a white gel pen. I'll put foam dimension on the back of my gnome, but first I'll assemble the little tiki torch. I have brown cardstock for the background and also the main portion of the torch, orange cardstock for the flame, and silver satin mirror cardstock for the rim. After assembling it, I'll put foam dimension on the back just on the upper area of the torch, and I'll adhere it on the left side and it'll sit behind my little gnome. Once the torch is adhered, I'll add the gnome. Using the same teal cardstock, I'll cut a small banner and adhere it in the upper right-hand corner. I first cut a fishtail on the bottom, then on the right side I'll cut it in slightly at an angle, flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. For a final finishing touch, I'm adding some glitter enamel dots. These are left over from a Pink and Main kit. It's a pretty teal color that matches the teal pattern paper. I'll put 3 on the left side of the torch and 2 on the right side of the gnome. And I'll also use the white gel pen and add a few highlights onto the tiki torch. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For card design number 5, I'll be using the Hibiscus Stencil set, starting with the flower portion. I have a piece of white cardstock in a mini stencil mat, and the ink color is Flirty Fuchsia by Catherine Pooler. It's a beautiful color that matches the pattern paper. After adding the first coat of ink, I'll go back and add a little more ink around the center of each of the flowers. I'm not stenciling the very bottom of the paper since I will be cutting this piece down to 5 1/4 inches by 4 inches. Once I finish with the first stencil layer, I'll do the second, and that adds the little stem to each of the flowers. The ink color is Catching Rays by Catherine Pooler. I'll make sure to get good coverage going all the way to the edge to fill in all of those stems. Then I'll trim down that panel. I'll layer it first on some black cardstock, then again on some fuchsia colored cardstock. Put some ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base. Sometimes it's fun to use 2 different cardstock colors for the background layers, and the black cardstock really adds some nice contrast. I will be using a little bit of pattern paper from the Catherine Pooler collection, the yellow with the orange flower design. I'll layer it on some black cardstock and adhere it to my card closer toward the bottom. Next I'll add an Octagon die cut, and I did cut this out from vellum. With that beautiful stencil background, I really don't want to cover up all of the design. So by using vellum, you'll still be able to see most of the design through the vellum. Using the same Octagon die, I cut out a second piece from some pearlescent tan cardstock, and I'll add a fun border using Jaded Blossom's Tropical die set. Then I'll put glue on the back and attach that piece at the bottom of the Octagon die cut. I've already assembled most of my little girl gnome. She's wearing the fun straw hat and a grass skirt, and she'll be holding a pina colada. I cut out the background from white cardstock. I use a light tan for the coconut, fuchsia cardstock for the straw. This is the same color I use for the very background layer. And the umbrella is pattern paper from the Catherine Pooler collection. I'll put glue on the back of her hands just in the finger area and attach them to the coconut. Then I'll flip that piece over, put foam dimension on the back, and adhere it in front of the little girl gnome. Next I'll put foam dimension on the back of the gnome, remove the release paper, and adhere her on the left side of the vellum octagon. So now she's sitting at the beach in the sand drinking a pina colada. For now, I'm placing the vellum octagon on the card. I won't adhere it until I add the sentiment. This card will feature the freebie Aloha word die sentiment. I used the same fuchsia colored cardstock for the sentiment, and some white shimmer cardstock for the outline. I'll put glue on the back and adhere it on the right side of the gnome, and the very last A of the word aloha will go off the edge of the octagon. Then I'll flip over the octagon die cut, put glue on the back just in the areas where the die cut pieces are. I don't want any of the glue to show through on the vellum. Then I'll adhere the octagon onto the card, more on the left side. That way there's enough room for the aloha word to still fit on the card. Underneath the sentiment, I'll also add 2 shell die cuts, and these are from Jaded Blossom's Tropical Die Set. For a final finishing touch, I'll use a white gel pen and add highlights to the gnome, her pina colada, and also the shells. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. This is my favorite card from the whole set. I love the new Hibiscus Stencil. The design is just beautiful. Now here's another look at the 10 cards I made using Jaded Blossom's brand new July release. This is another adorable release from Jaded Blossom. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links provided in the description box below. And don't forget, their July celebration is going on right now. It's a great time to grab all those fun goodies on your wish list. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.